located next to the Chateau Harmony.
Right.
Something
But at one
special.
point, that was all, at one point, I think that was all one property.
Yes.
So-
Yes, but
So
now,
unfortunately, you're looking at an old man looking back 50 years.
Yeah.
So-
We put in a new septic
Yeah.
system and everything. It's, we've been a catering business here since 2003,
Right.
and it's been a public water supply.
yeah, we get it tested every month.
Now, are you using the same water as the Chateau?
No, we have our own water supply.
So that would put you into a public water supply of your own,
Correct.
which would make you be registered and do more than just testing, just monthly testing. Whatever it is that required of a public water supply, you just have to do.
Okay.
So when we were a catering business here for this many years, why is it different now?
We may have been in a spot that maybe we overlooked you. If you were using that water for more than 25 people a day, you should have been, according to the state law, you should have been a public water supply.
Well, we only have 20 seats.
Yeah, but it's not 25 people at a time. It's 25 people a day.
Oh,
So it just means that you may not have to do anything different except register it and maybe it's not even any extra testing. That you
Okay.
may be doing all the things that you need to do already. It just have to be registered.
Could
Okay.
you send us a link how to do that? Because I don't have no idea what you're talking about. So.
Yes, tomorrow I can give you a contact that you can call.
Okay.
all right, Gene.
I'll
Thank you.
email you the contact.
And as far as our seeing everything in our facility, which is beautiful, like the facility that we have with the lighting and everything, could we do a walkthrough tour? Would that be good? Or could you come and visit us? I mean, we get inspected every year. I don't understand what the situation is when we've been in business for 2003 at this location as a catering business, and we get inspected by the Board of Health every year, what the issue would be there.
I don't know. Those were just my opinions. That I was just going to open the floor and
If anything, we did well and above and beyond what we should do. You should
Yeah,
come see our facility. It's pretty nice.
We had Dave Carmen. I don't know if you remember Dave Carmen when, we go back a long way. You guys helped me design my septic system, you and Robert. And we had it done, engineered, and we had an engineering all set up. We had the,
We've been working on this for
Yeah.
like almost 15 years, this process.
Urban and Lee.
So
I,
where is your septic system on your property?
that is, we have 3 5,000 gallon tanks in the backyard, and the pump chamber pumps up Crescent to across the street from the highway department into our own septic field.
So the SAS is not on your property. If we looked at it, it would be down Crescent Street in the field. Is that right? I'm just trying to figure out if you have
'Cause
a
I know,
public water supply, how
Lee-
we can get them both on the property.
Lee, I know that you and Mr. Bombardier and Robert approved the septic system for me back in 2003 or 4. I'm not quite sure
Right,
on the 3 or the 4.
And what I'm referring to now is the distance separation from your drinking well to your septic system.
Oh, that's over 100 feet.
Because if you're public water, it may have to be in the neighborhood of 200.
Okay.
That's where I'm going with this one. I just need to know that
Oh,
we have
well,
room.
is that from the septic bed?
That's well, it's the state regulations. That's what I'm just trying to.
Yeah, well, I would say from the septic bed, we're well beyond 200 feet.
Okay, but what
We're
about
close to
the,
3.
what about the equipment on for whatchamacallit, for the chateau?
The
there stuff
equipment
right
would-
be,
We'd have to look at all of that, Lee, because there's no way that for the Burnyards operation, that there's 15,000 gallons of tank capacity. So, but we just have to look, we have to get it out.
Okay,
That's part of looking at, from my standpoint, just looking at the engineering of this to just say, let's look at it and see what we have and.
okay,
absolutely.
sounds good.
Okay,
I have a question, Dick, for the folks. In your prep area, where is the hand washing station?
We have two of them.
One in the
We
back.
have one in the retail area where we're gonna be selling coffee and bakery. And we have one in the employee bathroom.
In the employee bathroom.
Yeah,
Does that meet code for hand washing for a food establishment to have your hand washing in the bathroom?
Well, it's separate from the public one.
I understand it's separate from the public one,
Mhm.
but I don't think that's okay. Now, I'm not positive about that,
Mm.
but I think you need a separate employee hand washing area in this prep room.
Well, we
It's
considered one sink a vegetable sink. I don't know if that could be a hand washing sink, and we do have a 3-bay sink. I don't know if that could be a separate hand washing
No,
sink. in there.
That's why getting a real drawing with everything shown is enough to let it, so to scale and show how everything fits together is so important on these things.
Yeah, I'm gonna have my daughter Crystal jump in for a minute because she knows about all this stuff.
Hi there.
Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
Good. How are all of you? I'm
Good.
Crystal. I'm Barry and Lori's daughter. I went to Granby Junior Senior High School. I live in Westfield now, but I'm quarantining here with them. So I figured I'd help them out with some of the drawings and the explanation that came along with the letter that we submitted as well. So I'm just trying to understand, I guess, what if we're not sure what the code regulation is, how would we go about finding that out, I guess? Because what we had drawn up is what we were assuming the code was. We're working off of knowledge from, 2003, 2004, what was required then. So is there could you refer us to some kind of whatever your codes are? Because there are, there's a vegetable in the prep area itself. There is a vegetable sink, there is a 3-bay dishwashing sink, and then there is a hand washing sink in the employee bathroom. And those 3 rooms are all connected to each other.
Yeah, and that's,
right, but
so,
we,
go ahead.
nothing in the kitchen setup and equipment room, as Herb pointed out, I don't see any hand washing sink anywhere on this drawing.
Yeah, the vegetable sink and the vegetable prep table cannot serve as employee hand washing.
Right, and that's why it's labeled as a vegetable sink.
Right, so let's eliminate those. And the bathroom is not a place where someone who is out prepping food who needs to wash their hands. Now, I'm not positive. Now, understand me, I'm not positive, but I don't think that would qualify for a hand washing area.
Could you give me how many feet it has to be away? Because it is in close proximity. We only have 2 to 3 employees, so I'm not sure what the codes are on that.
I don't
What
think that's a
we're chasing our tails right now in what the basic issue to start with is because you're not looking at a layout, an engineering drawing that shows this, not sketches on 4 sheets of paper, scale drawings, and then we take the scale drawings and then you can look at the state code and then see if it fits. It's pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
All right, so Rich, so what you're saying is we have to hire someone to, and I'm not trying to be smart and I'm not trying to be wise here, is what you're saying is what we need to submit is we need to get a professional to draw out scaled drawings of this. There's no way that we can, you know, take a walkthrough either through video or
have somebody come here.
or schedule a very like socially distanced, respectable, you know, wearing
Why
masks
don't you guys
kind of
just take
walkthrough.
some graph paper and measure what you have for equipment and lay it out? If the sandwich unit is 36 inches, that's what we need to know.
Okay, we can do that.
So the original
I mean-
drawing, you just need measurements.
The room is X by Y, and all these things on here are a certain size. You know, they spec them out, whatever, and we just don't know what size counters and width, height, depth, all this stuff is. Bain Marie, the double stack oven, etc. We're just guessing here.
And can we make again an appointment for a Board of Health inspector to come out here and see because I know it's different. Who's the Board of Health inspector now? Who is
Well,
this?
I think the initial thing we need to do is check with our the state food code, and we have a young lady that does a lot of work in Hoyle. She's very knowledgeable about this. If I'm not overstepping my bounds, she may be
Who
a
is
good
the Board of
resource.
Health inspector for Granby?
You're talking to all of them.
As well as the
Okay, so is
people
this
that we,
somebody that could come out and visit our location? Because I think that would be kind of easy to do too.
no, you're backwards. What you need to do is give the drawing, the scale drawing of what you have. So, because our job is not to go and say, oh, we're going to use a tape measure and we're going to see if there's enough space between the prep table and the stove, and said, you know, in fact, when I look at my drawing, it looks kind of small. But the way you deal with that is to make it so that the drawings are right. And then you can say, mine doesn't tell me anything about the floors.
Okay, so can you, is there something maybe, and I'm sorry to cut you off, I didn't mean to there. But just to narrow the conversation, I think a little bit about it. Is there something that we can reference so that when we're making those measurements, we can make sure that everything's included that you need?
Absolutely. Jean, can you get them directions to get where they need to go to get the state code?
Yes, I will do that. I'll send you a link.
Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
that's a good place to start for sure. And hopefully everything's all right. And so before we close though, we haven't got any engineer's statement or sanitarian statement on the septic system. We haven't closed on the public water supply and distance from septic systems. But that's something that, again, that when you start off with the business, that you do need a professional that says, yes, I've assessed this and it's work. It's right.
And
We're all
Gary, who
set.
put in our septic system?
Yeah, Robert Sheehan and his dad.
It's already professional use. So
Is that something that, do you guys have that on file still, that septic system?
I'll bet we do.
Yes, we do have it on file.
that should be
Okay.
all on file for you then.
Okay. Gene, that,
Yes.
that engineering copy that I gave you to copy,
Mm-hmm.
is that good enough to present, or if I bring the full copy up again?
Well, that just basically showed the room. Did that show where everything was located and the measurements?
Not all of it, no.
So you could probably work from that drawing and plug in your measurements and
Okay.
what it is and what the material, the construction material is. So like your floor, your countertops, that type of thing.
Okay.
This shouldn't be a hard job.
Floor and
Okay.
on there.
No, it's not. I mean, you have a file, like I said, we've been working with the town of Granby for almost 15 years on this project, so there's a lot of stuff on file. The septic system, everything that, it should be on file with our catering business that we started. We got approved for this 20-seat restaurant when,
2004.
2004, I think, 2005. There was already a project going on with this cafe.
Yeah, but that's
That's how
15
far
years
back it
ago.
goes.
That's 15 years ago, quite a while. Quite a while.
Mhm.
So,
Okay,
so you'll get that stuff and,
okay,
and we should be able to, you ought to have where your well location is, that would be, that's stuff that you need to do.
Okay, so can I just recap just to make sure that we have everything here for the next time? So we're going to get the reference to the state code so we can make sure that the next, floor plans that we send you have all the measurements that you need.
And,
Is that right?
flooring and lighting.
Yep.
Well, they're gonna have a lot more than just the measurements. The state code is gonna give you the requirements that Herb was just talking about, what sinks are needed and where. And the state code will talk about the lights and whether they're covered so they can't drop, when they break, drop down onto the food. There's a whole bunch, it's a big thing to
Yeah,
go through.
and I think that's fine. We can work our way through the code and go, line item by line item of what we need to submit to you guys. We just want to make sure, I'm just trying to make sure that I understand everything that you need for the next time.
The one that you shouldn't discount is the public water supply, and to make sure that depending on the size of the restaurant, the distance that Lee was talking about to septic systems changes with the amount of water that you use. So that I'm guessing you're going to be a short distance. I don't think you're going to
So
use
just
a lot.
to give you a point of reference,
Cartesian well,
do you know, so the septic system is not on what you might think is our physical property driving by,
It's on
something
different
special.
Right, it's in the parking lot, right? In the
It's
back.
not
It's
actually.
No.
on a different piece of property.
it's right across the street from the highway department. We
Oh,
bought
when
land.
we talk about, I look at the septic system is all inclusive. Those tanks that you were talking about and the pumps, those are on your side of the brook.
Yes,
And then it pumps over, and you can see when you drive by there across from the highway department, you can see where that system is.
correct.
But,
Yeah.
but please be aware that if the public water supply becomes an issue, this can change everything, either positively or negatively. So that may be the first thing to really look at hard, because you got to follow the minimum state regs on this thing. There's no bending on this whatsoever.
And
That's number one, I believe.
And I think that was, I thought that was
It's
already.
your
that was
property,
already
it's
looked at
the
when we had a
Chateau
catering company.
property, it's all your neighbors' properties are all involved in
Because
this.
we want to have 20 or more people here.
So don't go crazy if we can't get you the distance you need for public water. This could be a game changer.
Okay, if you could, yeah, so, Jean, I think you said that you were gonna send the state codes that have those distances, correct?
no, it's
Yes,
not. No, be careful, Gene, because
Okay.
we're crisscrossing through a couple different regulations. One is the regulations on restaurants.
Okay.
The other is the regulation on water supply and septic systems. So there are actually three different regulations here. And like it or not, this is some technical stuff. Once you get into the requirements of
Yes.
public water supply, you are going to have to get an engineer or a sanitarian to deal with that.
Right, I understand that, but if it, like I said, we don't have anything really to reference other than like it being said that, there are state codes, and I would just like to, take a look at those codes and see what it says, and then we'll, take the steps that are necessary that you're all, saying that we need to take to make it work. We
And
understand.
Gene, what we ought to be able to get them, the 3 places, get them the codes on the restaurant. And again, before you run a restaurant, you need to know those. But the other is the next one is you can direct them to Title V, which will deal with septic systems. And then we can direct them towards public water supplies, and maybe you can give them a name at the DEP to
Yep.
contact to deal with those 3 things.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Gene.
You're welcome.
Our next agenda item, and I just lost my sheet. Here it is at 7:30, we have Bobby Rougeau. I can't tell if Bobby's here. No. We can wait for a couple more minutes. It's not quite 7:30.
Okay. I'm just going to go back because we had one more Title V.
Okay.
43 East Street.
Oh, that was that's that abandoned farmhouse on the left-hand side.
Right.
That Toretti did that. I believe they failed it.
He's got passes on it.
Okay, perfect. That was Brian Pranka got the job, and he gave it to Toretti to do. There's a hand-dug well right outside the old farmhouse, and in 87 feet or so away, because I measured it, there is some fairly new components in the ground. The water in the well was roughly 5 feet down on that particular day because they took the cover off. How that hand dug well was there with new components in the backyard, and what I mean by new components is new tank and D-box, is beyond me. But it is what it is. And when they called Brian Pranka, which doesn't make any sense, that since they did the inspection, not Brian, his first comment was, if there's any question at all, it's bank-owned property, just fail it and they'll never know, which didn't make any sense to me. But that's how the conversation went. And now if they're passing it, I'm really lost, because at that point we didn't go any further to uncover, I think it's a concrete, I forget what they call those concrete cylinders, Dick, with the blocks taken out. There was some standing water in that, but they did not uncover it and do any measurements, because the conversation with Pranka, who basically hired them, was to act as the hatchet guy, which isn't the right way to go.
Yeah, it does say, let's see, the septic tank is metal and over 20 years old.
Yeah,
and structurally unsound.
That's incorrect. It's a new concrete tank and a new concrete D-box with very little wear.
All right.
It seems to me that we ought to ask the inspector to come in and talk to us.
Yeah, that would be one of the kids from Clean Septic.
Nick Toretti.
Nick Toretti, because that is complete fabrication.
Well, if the purpose of having a Board of Health member there is to make sure that it gets through and written down correctly, and it's not what's written down, then just receiving it, and once we know that it's wrong, Herb, I know at this point you don't want to get involved with certifying that it's right, but all at this point is Lee saying what I saw on the ground isn't what you have written on the paper.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to accompany Lee out to the site and review it with him.
That would be, and I guess what happens is we start by getting the inspector involved, because I guess we're saying what we saw isn't what you saw. So let's talk about it. And then the
Sure.
next thing would be that you guys take a trip together.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Gene, can you get in touch with them and arrange that? for
Sure,
our next?
I will.
Okay. Now do we have Bobby Rougeau on the line now? No.
It's, by the way, with the last folks that were on, I don't have the codes in front of me, but I cannot believe that a hand washing sink in a bathroom is going to pass code for a restaurant
I don't think so
where
either.
people are preparing food. You've got to have a hand washing area dedicated.
Yeah.
Not the vegetable sink, not the other prep sink. What the hell are they talking about?
Well, just the fact that they're opening a restaurant and don't know that there's a food code says that you can be pretty sure there's going to be a problem.
There's a
You think?
problem. There is a problem.
Yeah, they don't want to spend any money on the design or on the engineering, but they just want to, make income.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not good.
So anyways.
And it's probably not for, just gossip, but did the daughter say she's quarantining at
Yeah.
her house right now?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Is that
what
what you heard too?
So that's
that's a little
probably
rough.
not a
That's a
good
problem.
time to be taking a tour.
No, thank you.
but she's also quarantining in the same room with them.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
And my guess is, well, here's another problem. Are they still running the catering business?
wow, if that's the case,
I mean, is that what I heard is that what you guys heard too?
Yes.
if that's the case, then Gene, we have to tomorrow tell them that they can't do anything.
Okay.
And they should, I guess the first thing is to find out if she was literally meaning that they were quarantined. But
Yeah, I'm afraid we
Okay.
may get some creative answers here, but this is not a good scenario.
Okay.
That's right. If
They
the
don't
other two are doing catering and she's quarantining there, what the hell are they doing?
well, that's what we're saying. If
Yeah.
that, other than if she was just saying, well, she said she lives in Westfield and she was quarantined there. So
That's what she said. That
She
is
said
what.
that. So there could actually be a very big problem here. And again, Gene, if you could follow.
I will.
I'm glad you brought that up again, Herb, by the way.
What's that?
About the sinks and the layouts and,
Yes.
you think about what the conversation was. This sounds like it's maybe a little out of control here. How can they not understand the seriousness of COVID-19 with people running the catering business and everything's going to be just fine? I don't get it.
Yeah.
They want to start a little cafe.
I agree, Lee. But
This isn't good.
but the lady said they've been at it for 15 years, so they're pros.
It's what it sounds like.
So anyways, I guess it is Alan here? Okay, Alan's not here yet. So we could get one of the other next ones. Two issues with a letter that I sent out after Greg Briggs. This is on Dollar General. And Brian O'Toole told me that the letter that I sent, and I sent you guys copies of it, basically said that the Board of Health was going to end up, or had already determined that the water in the 4 ponds was a public health nuisance and that we were going to require abatement. And so I only reiterated what we discussed and voted on at our last meeting. And what Brian O'Toole said is that once I copied you guys in on the letter, that it almost was asking for your opinion if you disagreed. And if you gave the opinion, then we would be in an open meeting law violation, a technical open meeting law violation. Well, obviously you guys didn't respond, but Brian said that we should enter that note into our minutes, that it just receive it so that it becomes part of the public record of this meeting, to just say that that note did go out. The next thing that he explained to me, so we know it, is that with the open meeting law, is that if we agree to send a letter out and we say what the intent of the letter is, and I give a draft of a letter to send out to you guys, once you get that draft and do anything to it, it becomes an open meeting law violation. So that the way we have to do this is we either say that we're gonna send the letter out the way one of us feels like, who took the assignment, is gonna send it out without anybody else's review, or we send it out for review, but can't talk to each other about it. And if someone says we need to, if we say we need to close on the review, then we have to either wait till the next meeting to send it out, or we have to hold a separate meeting. So it slows that down for sure.
So what, Dick, how do we deal with any edits to that letter?
That's what's going to happen is we're going to, I guess, with what we have now for the at least where we can have these kind of Zoom meetings, what we could say is there are some edits after the draft goes out. We get back to Jean and say we've got edits, at which point Jean has to schedule 2 days later. She posts it and said, we're going to have one of these Zoom meetings 2 days later, and we go over the edits and we get it done.
Perfect. Let's do it.
So we're all set. The third part of this, I see Alan is here, but I might let's close then on the actual public health nuisance letter that we said we were going to do 2 weeks ago. I in fact did send something out. I did send. I noticed that Herb sent in a couple changes to that. We didn't act on it. Herb just sent it out, so no one has discussed those changes. But I did also send it to Brian O'Toole, Brian O'Toole suggested that along with section 122, that the next section is section 123, with that regulation that specifically talks about the ability to give the $1,000 fine. And what I did is I changed the words of the letter to say section 122 and section 123. And I'm okay with and that was the only change Brian worried about. And I'm okay with the changes that Herb sent in. And if that's the case, are we in a spot that we want to send the letter out? Oh, there is a discussable point before we do that. One of the issues that I arbitrarily put in was to say the abatement should occur by August 3rd, which was 2 months. And I chose that. It wasn't an arbitrary number that I put in. I figured that it could take the better part of a month for the engineering investigation to occur, and then somewhere less than a month to come up with a design, and then a couple of weeks to implement it. And what do we think about that?
Somebody is buggering up the audio here.
I think it may be Alan who is on right now.
Alan, stop buggering up the audio.
I will try.
Okay, thank you. I certainly looked at the August time and I wondered about it, as you know. I wonder if it's enough time, because just the sloth involved in so much of getting anything done. I just wonder.
I could
That's not
support,
to say that I don't agree, but I just wonder.
I think when I just gave you that rough timetable, I
Yep.
don't think they can comply with the timetable I just gave you.
Yeah, that's why I questioned it.
Do we bump it out to September 3rd, give them 3 months to do it?
I think that would be wise, yes.
What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, that's more than reasonable, I believe, to complete the task.
If
Gives
that's
them,
the case,
12
then let's move.
gives them 12 weeks.
We'll move it out to September 3rd, and then they can come back if they think they can't comply.
Sure.
They could very well come back to us and say, you know, the water is all dried up, we can't do the investigation. That's at least a possibility. So if we do that, do we want to have Gene send that out?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, then we'll do that.
Okay,
Gene,
now,
I'll
Dick, you
send
said you're going to send a revised?
I'm going to send the revised. What I'll do
Okay.
is, as long as we agreed that we're going to take Herb's suggested changes, which we did, then I'll put those changes in. I'll change the date I'll make sure that September 3rd isn't a Sunday, and I'll give it to you, then you can send it out.
Okay. You got it.
Okay. Alan, you're next.
Greetings, all.
Hi, Alan.
I
Hello.
hope you're all well.
Yep.
For
Yeah.
Lee's and Herb's benefit, this is a nasty drawing. The drawing isn't. It's a pretty drawing, but it's a nasty system. He's limited space, close to wells, close to the water at Forge Pond.
Yeah.
And And I had a conversation with Alan. My concerns, there were a couple. His proposed well location number 2 was adjacent to the property to the west. It's not much further from the septic system than location number 1, which is at the opposite side of this homeowner's property, all of which is within 75 feet of the leach field. There's no room to get 100 feet. And I suggested that location 2 is going to wipe out the homeowner property to the west as being suitable for a septic system change, and that's where the septic system is located. And I suggested to Alan that was a very bad thing, and Alan agreed. The other thing that was particularly bothersome to me is that the installation of the leach field is in a spot that on the drawing said, oh, by the way, he doesn't own this property. And he's got to get use of that property to put it there. And I said, well, we can't very well approve a design that has the leach field off the property. And so Alan did tell me that he was coming to talk to us tonight, that the owner of the property with the septic problem has in fact dealt with the owner of the adjacent property, and they have an agreement of sorts to allow the field system to purchase or use the adjacent property, some of it. So Alan was asking if we were going to agree with the design in principle, could he move forward with the surveying and legal work to get that to happen? So now, Alan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, you did a great job. I think I was trying to help you with well 1 choices here, keeping in mind, and if you can't see this very well, I apologize. I thought this might help though. This entire side of the property is bordered by Forge Pond and the brook associated with Forge Pond. So that's a huge portion of this property that is bordered there. The current well is here in the basement of the building. That's out. That's just not an option anymore. The current septic is here for one portion of the
Not to
building.
interrupt you guys, but Lee and Herb, well, Lee doesn't because he's not on video. But Herb, do you see Alan right now? I don't have a picture of Alan.
No, I'm looking at Alan's beautiful drawing though, and I'm wondering how the 41-foot, how was this ever agreed to in the first place?
I can't answer that, my friend. I can only tell you where the well is now and where this septic is now and where this septic is now. We're talking about something that's more than 50 years in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I could just move on into the future a little bit, these 2 old septic tanks would be dealt with flowable fill. And by the way, this entire approach has been concurrently sent to conservation for their review, which will be in another week or so.
Now, Alan, why don't you want to, smash and fill here? Why are you talking about flowable fill?
Well, we're doing flowable fill into these septic tanks to minimize the impact to the soils for conservation's sake.
Okay.
What does smash and fill mean?
Well,
Smash and fill.
Go ahead, Alan.
Smash and fill means you take the old septic, you pump it, you collapse the top of the system, and then you replant all the grass above where you've collapsed this old septic tank. By doing flowable fill, what you're doing is pumping the tank and then filling it with a slurry that allows you to do non-disturbance of soils in the area. While we do put silt fence up, it's of minimal need. And there's two actual septic tank vessels here. I suspect they're both less than 1,000 gallons. That's as far as the old system goes. The new system is here, and can you see my diagram now? I know Lee can't, but can the two of you?
Well, I have your print,
Okay.
Alan, right?
And
So-
I do too, Alan.
Okay, good.
I don't
So the
have,
old leach field, actually, the property line, as you know, Lee, goes right through the old leach field where we perked. But he has spoken with his neighbor who's willing to sell him land to put the septic here, as I've shown it.
Okay.
And we talked about the possibility of additional land to try to get a well further than the proposed 74 feet from the leach area, but the neighbor was not receptive to that.
So all we're gonna get is what we got.
Exactly, exactly. And it
This
does meet,
proposal Is it? Okay.
Now,
no,
I talked to Alan today about the impact of that well being closer than 100 feet to the leach field. Now, neither one of us felt confident that we knew how far that casing was going to go down to hit bedrock. But if you look at what's happening with a 6-foot water table, which obviously comes to the surface at the brook, at the pond, this sewage, the effluent, the treated effluent, is moving towards the pond, which means it's not going to move very far vertically. It's going to move in a horizontal plane to the north, and maybe
to the north,
maybe to the north and that northeast, but basically northerly. And the question that I had of Alan is that if you put a casing in that goes, who knows, it could go 50 feet before it hits bedrock and seal it. There's not much of a chance that well is going to get contaminated. However, the question that Alan did, well, he answered it, but not in a way that well, it's a way that his client should expect him to answer. My issue was when you're in an environmentally sensitive area where you've got wells that are close, why would we not go to an elevated functioning, a higher level of purification system, whether it's recirculating, whether, lower nitrogen, something. And as Alan pointed out, that it's not, the code doesn't require him to do that. But in our case, we could in fact say that we're asking for these variances where we want some additional safety put in here.
you mean want additional safety for the homeowner?
Correct.
Yes, not
And
for
the
us.
environment, both.
So just to offer some feedback, I think if we look at it from an effluent standpoint, and Dick and I already talked about this, Forge Pond is already compromised by, and I apologize, by my town in the sense that our wastewater treatment plant for the Belchertown actually goes into that brook and pond. Having said that, what I'm more concerned about, of course, is the well, because that's what somebody's consuming. And on the well side, I certainly can understand a test when the well is put in. And if you want to add a requirement to test it again later, that's fine. Keep in mind, this is not a property transfer. It's the same people staying there. It's an in-family inheritance situation. And so they are fully aware of the situation with the well and the offsets. I agree with Richard. The well will be drilled deeper and it will be in a different aquifer altogether. My concern, I think, is not only just about designing the septic correctly, but about the well quality being safe and potable and staying safe and potable. And, should it test well, that's great. Should it not test well? Well, there are other things you can do for that well, like add UV protection. I think as far as the septic goes, without adding advanced treatment, which adds another $8,000 to $10,000 to the system, and maintenance requirements on a quarterly or half-year basis that are also quite expensive, this meets the code. And I think that's what Dick was saying.
So looking at your print, Alan, if the well was moved in a somewhat northeast, well, proposed location number 1 is what I'm referring to, move northeast a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly towards the existing septic tank, which is going to be pumped out and filled with flowable fill. That would get us a more potentially maybe 100-foot separation from the proposed SAS.
Well, I'm getting maybe 75 to 80 at best. I know you can't see the drawing, but I'm using a dimensional arrow on it right now in AutoCAD, and I'm still at about 75 feet. Because I really can't put it into the pond. I got to keep it 20, 25-foot offset for conservation's sake.
Oh, they won't let you go any closer than that?
I would say 20 feet is probably the max. Right now, the well I've proposed is, it's probably about, it's less than 20. It's 18 feet maybe.
Okay.
But you would get a few more feet going north.
Yeah, but you're also moving, groundwater, frankly, is moving, as Dick said, to the north. And so you're moving the well in the direction of groundwater from the effluent of the leach field. I don't know that I'd recommend that.
I would.
I got you.
And why is the groundwater moving north?
Groundwater, like any, groundwater is mobile, okay? Groundwater is not static. And I'll talk to you now in my background, which is hydrogeology. Groundwater moves in the direction of high elevations to low elevations, even underground. So if you think of the ground, the shallow aquifer we're talking about right now, it's going to be moving toward the north, which is from here where the leach field is to the north where the forage pond and in the direction the river is going. So it's probably pretty close to due north, I would say.
Alan, if you add into this picture, get away from this little, it's not really a peninsula, this little bump that says, yeah, but there's water all over this place. It can go left, it can go right. Instead, move 1,000 feet or 500 feet to the south, at which point you've got a water table, and it's flat ground there, and the water is higher. So when I'm looking at it towards my stomach, and that whole area is draining, is being pushed towards this pond. And that water isn't really affected so much by this little bump that sticks out. Its bulk motion is going from 202 towards the north.
Correct.
And that's gonna be just sweeping this spot. It's gonna scour right through there to the north.
Now, having said that, the well is going to be drilled in a deeper aquifer that's down into the rock,
Right.
which generally has little, if any, contact with the shallow aquifer that's flowing towards Weston Brook and Forge Pond.
Okay.
But even if you were looking and saying, Alan, that you were trying not to get I'll call it the polluted water, which shouldn't really be very polluted, but let's say there was polluted water that came to the outer casing in the well, and let's say that it wasn't sealed perfectly and it leaked down to the seal at the base. It's just nicer to keep the well out of that stream of effluent if you can.
Yes, agreed. And I'll also throw one other element in there, that water flows in 3 dimensions. In other words, when you're down in a valley situation like this, often water is flowing upward, not downward.
Yeah.
And from the hydraulic head from the hills. So the chances are this well is going to have a significant upward hydraulic gradient based on where it's located geographically.
Yeah, because
So-
the water all down underneath the ground below the level of Forge Pond
Yes,
ultimately ends up in Forge Pond too.
yes.
So it has to get back up to the surface.
Okay.
I think,
Is there
from my
any-
standpoint, Alan, I think this is the best use you can be working with, and you have to see if you can get the land.
Well, that's why we're looking for your conceptual approval tonight, so they can go ahead with the cost of the survey and the legal costs of getting the deed work done.
So if you look at,
So-
as I look at it, the two options that you could go beyond this would be require the extra level of treatment, but again, it's not gonna protect the well. It would be to protect a little bit the lake that's already been compromised. Or you could go and say, you know what, we're gonna put a tight tank, but that doesn't make any sense here at all.
Nope.
Is it practical to push the proposed SAS a little bit more westerly and make a, for lack of a better term, make a dogleg layout? You know what I mean?
So that's a good question, and Rick and Dick asked the same question earlier. And what I said was, when you start to mound the driveway up enough to support the leach field offset, you're going to have a
Yeah.
very tricky runoff situation with a sort of a knoll or bump in the driveway.
Okay, I understand. All right. Okay, I mean, I'm just looking what's in front of me here. I'm trying to.
Yep. No,
No,
it's a good
that's what I
question.
asked Alan about. I said, you know, if you can't get this land, you may be forced to put this system, the whole system in the driveway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, scheduled 40 pipe and just do the best you can do. And
And then figure out how you're
Good.
gonna deal with it.
right.
And then we're looking at variances, not necessarily local upgrade approvals. That's a whole nother situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Herb, what are you thinking? This is the best we're gonna get?
Well, you can't see me anymore because my iPad failed and I plugged in where I'm not. I don't know. I was flummoxed by the whole thing, that there just wasn't enough room, and there's bad options and there's worse options here, it seems. So I would defer to people who know a lot more than I do on this, but this doesn't look appetizing to me.
It's not, you have a good sense of taste, Herb. It's not appetizing. And what happens when Alan said he doesn't know the history, most of these places were little shacks, camps that are 75 years old. This one's at the end of the line. I don't know. I think this one's got a little different history.
Mm-hmm.
This might have been a processing plant in the past. I need or something. I really don't know. It's different,
Yeah.
but there's no way to really know what they were doing there.
So I think we have to, from my view, that maybe we just have to let Alan move forward and see if they can get the next step done.
So just a point of philosophy, Dick. When you have problems, you make exceptions. Why do we hold other people to non-exceptions?
When you look at it and say, can you push this further? Can you get more out of it? Can you get it safer? It looks like if you could get more land, you could make it safer. But if he literally can't get the land, And if you look at going back to those regulations on tight tanks, which is when you say, okay, I just can't make the rules work. You can move out of our variance position and or you can go and put a tight tank and say, okay, but we'll do that. But if you recall, that regulation says only do the tight tank at the very last resort where you can't do anything else. And if
Well,
you-
but this guy is going to buy 2,000 square feet from his neighbor. Right?
Yes,
Well, okay, and Alan said the neighbor was not amenable to a well location, but then that's just a question of how much.
yeah, if you go that way, Herb, you could also say, you know what? We don't want a lot extra. Why don't you give us, now where Lee was talking, instead of having that diagonal line, how about giving us a right angle that extends from that north-south property line and then goes over? And once you do that, you can move that leach facility another 25 or 30 feet without asking for a lot of extra land.
Yeah,
And in fact, if he's willing to give up something, once you move that leach field off to the west, you don't need so much of the land that's to the east. So if you take essentially the same amount of land, but take it over from the west side instead of the east side, you could move this thing and maybe get almost 100 feet.
well, that's sort of my point, Dave.
But then you have a third dimension, the vertical, the runoff issue, and the lump in the driveway, if you will, to drive into the property.
No, Alan, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is if you look at where you've got on the bottom of the north-south property line where it says overhead, if that line were extended down so it intersected with your new southwest northeast, that with the two dashes in it, that line, and create a spot, a right triangle in there, then you wouldn't have to encroach on the driveway. You would just slide this thing to the southwest, and you'd create the space that Herb and Lee are looking for from the well. Leave at the well in location number one, and instead of taking that diagonal that starts where it says 96, instead of that, move everything over to the left, and you wouldn't take very much more room. You'd keep the septic, the leach field, you'd keep it to the southeast of the driveway, and so you wouldn't do anything different here other than take a different piece of property.
Are you talking? I don't know which direction you're in. Here's the gravel driveway.
Yeah, what I'm saying, if you were to take the SAS right now and then just slide it with exactly where it is now, slide it along the same center line that you have. Just slide it along, and then where you bang into your proposed lot line, you just move it over, stretch
But
the lot.
that's right into the I'm sorry, Dick. That's right into the driveway of that farmer's tractor driveway there.
Yeah, but you already told me that was just a little cart path. And,
well, it is, but unfortunately, he's got a wetland down to the south there, and we can't really move a driveway down that way further without getting pushback from conservation. See, there's a wetland down here as
Yeah.
well. If that wasn't there, I'd say absolutely.
Well, Alan, can you slide it 20 feet closer to the lot line?
And make the slopes and breakouts that I need, no.
See, I don't understand enough of this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the wetland causes a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the one to the south,
The
absolutely.
one to the
Yeah,
south is a.
yeah. Because
Yeah,
you're not
well,
just talking about
then
moving
not
the
to
leach
make
field.
it- Let's put some pressure on you, Alan, because you and I talked today, and you are not positive that that's a jurisdictional wetland.
Well, no. It will be, even if it's isolated, it's over 10,000 feet. I'm sure it's jurisdictional. I don't think there's any question about that.
Oh, see, I can't tell how big it is. Oh, I
Yeah,
can't tell.
no. It's over the square footage. There's isolated and there's isolated. The GIS map showed it to be of substantial size. So they're gonna
Oh.
find it jurisdictional.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah.
so
It's
now
tight.
you get into the problem, Herb, about where you work and struggle to try to get this thing to,
Yeah,
once you back off and you say, well, now we've moved the well, we try to get that safe. You try to protect the neighbor. You don't want to do a taking on him. You know, the neighbor to the west.
yeah.
And
If it's any help to Herb in terms of history, 30 years of doing these drawings, I've probably had 100 systems under 100 feet from septic to well. And knock on wood, none of them have come back to me with drinking water potability issues.
Understood.
The actual original offset of 50 feet, and I said this to Dick earlier, in the original study by DEP, commissioned by DEP, was determined to be 50 feet to a leach field as the minimum, based on a shallow Cape Cod aquifer scenario, not the one we have here with bedrock drilled wells. So, I mean, there's a little comfort in that.
Yes.
well, the other is if you look at where the existing well is, it's probably I'll bet it's a shallow well.
Oh, I would bet it is a jet point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just another question, the proposed well location number 1. So you drill that. How do we know that the Forge Pond aquifer isn't strangely configured down below and that isn't going to be contaminated?
That's a good question. But I will say that generally what you have is a shallow body of sand and gravel over the ledge or rock. And what the drillers do is they go down with casing through that shallow sand and gravel and actually case that off until they're well seated into the bedrock. And then the water from the well actually gets drawn from another 100 feet below in general or more. And it's not interfered with by that shallow, more contaminated, more bacteria prone aquifer. And that's been the reason why we went to drill wells 50 years ago.
Okay, so the drillers are confident they can do that and have a clean water.
No, and I'm not trying to belly here, but I worked on well regulations when I worked at the DEP in the 1980s just for that reason.
Okay. Okay, so my last question is there a hydrology course to audit?
Yeah, UMass, David Bout has a wonderful course.
Probably not for the next couple months, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
from the good
virtual
news, you might be able to audit it just like we're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I hate this Zoom stuff, but this is the best we can do.
Okay, so we've got other people on our agenda that we're 15 minutes late with. So Alan, you're gonna move forward.
I will tell my customer that they have the conceptual agreement that this makes sense, if that's okay with all of you. And, or if that's how you vote effectively. And I appreciate your time.
Okay, good night, Alan.
Good
All
night.
right, Alan, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, next on our agenda, we're 15 minutes late, is Stephen Sullivan. Are you here?
Yes, I am here. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me in tonight. I appreciate it.
We're sorry to keep you waiting. That's we've been good up until now. These were nasty.
Not a problem at all. No worries.
So you're here to talk a little bit about graduation. Herb, have you sent out anything on the current guidelines on graduations to Stephen?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay. Stephen, have you seen them? There's some,
I saw something that was issued on May 21st. But we had started planning on April 21st when the governor had closed the schools. I think our plan falls in line with what has come out for the most part, maybe with some little tweaks here and there. But I think for the most part, the plan that we wanted to present does fall in line with those regulations.
the ones that I'm looking at are actually May 19th, but it basically is saying that after July 19th, there are going to be other regulations, but the bullet that I'm reading says ceremonies held between now and July 18th should be held virtually or in extremely limited other circumstances following safety protocols, i.e. car parades. And then it says after the 19th, they may take place outside under the following standards and assuming the public health data supports the continuing opening of the state. It goes on that I don't know how that goes with what you're thinking. However, there is another statement that talks about limitations on gatherings. And it says gatherings of more than 10 people are prohibited throughout the Commonwealth. Gatherings subject to this order include, without limitation, community, civic, public, leisure, faith-based, or sporting events, concerts, conferences, conventions, fundraisers, parades, fairs, festivals, weddings, funerals, and any other similar event or activity that brings together more than 10 persons in any confined indoor or outdoor space. This limitation shall not apply to operations or activities of any business or organization. And then the next sentence says, this order does not prohibit gatherings of more than 10 people in an unenclosed outdoor space, such as a park, athletic field, or parking lot. So those two things don't exactly fit together.
Yeah, I agree. I also have This was issued later in the day on May 21st from Tom Scott. He's the Executive Director of Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. I can summarize for you unless you would want me to share my screen for you to read it, or I'm happy to read it if you'd like.
I'm okay with summarizing. How are you, Lee and Herb?
I'm fine.
So,
Sounds like you're free to summarize.
okay, great. So basically, it references the advisory that school superintendents and schools had just received from DPH and the Commissioner of Education, and acknowledges that schools have likely been planning these events for weeks prior to these guidelines. And many who have had these drive-in and drive-through arrangements have already received approval from local boards of health and communicated plans to your community. You may feel sufficient support to just carry on as planned. So based on that, my hope was we could talk tonight. I could present what we were thinking about of the plan, and if you had suggestions or changes that we would need to make, we would certainly be open to doing that. And I agree with your initial statement that the first two guidelines that you read didn't completely jive with one another, as I think has been the case for a lot of this, understandably so.
So why don't you tell us what you propose?
Sure. So we've been working with a graduation work group. We have Lieutenant O'Grady from the police department is also the parent of a senior, so he's been part of that. Some of our staff and students. We've talked about many ideas, including a virtual graduation, including parades and things like that. Our students were really adamant, and we understand that a lot has been taken from them, nobody's fault, but they're missing a lot of senior events and things like that being out since March. They felt it was important that we try to keep the graduation date that we originally had planned, which was June 13th, if possible. And they wanted a way where they could celebrate with family and celebrate each other in some way. So what we've come up with is a drive-in style graduation. We had talked about potential of Dufresne Park, but we decided in the end to go with the new parking lot at the junior senior high school that sits between East Meadow and the junior senior high school. I guess in terms of details, we had discussed the possibility of allowing the seniors only to be in seats at least 6 feet apart, front, back, left, right, behind, in the parking lot, and everyone else, the audience, would be in their vehicles. So each graduate would be allowed to have 2 vehicles on campus. We have about 120 parking spots available. We have 56 graduates, so we would have sufficient parking in that lot, even when we set up the stage and a tent to cover the stage we were planning or considering. And, again, working with the police department, the highway department, fire department, and others to make sure that there's an appropriate flow of traffic, safety measures in that way were being taken care. And then our requirement was everyone would have to have a mask on. We were actually purchasing masks for all of our seniors with the class of 2020 written on them. We would be limiting the number of speakers, things like that, have multiple microphones if we had multiple speakers. Limiting the bathroom use. We have talked about the idea of East Meadow being for males or females and the junior senior high school being for males or females. So we'd have multiple bathrooms, again, to reduce the impact of people contaminating a specific space or being in close proximity, having those 2 things. And then also shortening the ceremony as much as we could to hopefully limit the need for somebody to require a bathroom. But obviously you can't predict that. So we would need to have something available.
So how do you hand out diplomas, Steve?
So the diplomas with our plan right now, the diplomas would be pre-arranged in by staff, likely up to 3 to 4 days in advance. They'd be put in plastic bags, for better or worse. And then they would be set on tables. The tables would then be brought out, and then the parent would take the diploma. The parent will actually be issuing the diploma. The parent would be able to take it right from the plastic and would be awarding the student the diploma. So there would be no handshaking, no hugs, no diplomas given from me or the superintendent or chairman of the school committee. It would just be a family member that the child identifies, the student identifies prior to.
So the parent gets out of their car, picks up the diploma, and awards it to the student.
Yep, and that would be the only time the parent would be out of the car, would be to issue the diploma. And
Right.
We had talked about doing 10 at a time so that they could space out, and then the parents would be able to space out, but we could limit that to even fewer if need be.
Right.
Parents also have masks?
Yes.
Man, in a time of COVID with all this badness going on, this sounds not too bad to me.
One of the things I would look at would be the bathrooms, that to make it that somehow come out that either you've got one person or two people in at a time, or something that said we don't just leave those as buildings that say, okay, if you got to go, everybody goes in, and they're, make it so that's a controlled process as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't get into too much detail there, but yes, we did plan to have staff at the entrances to both places so that they could limit the number. Also working to see if we could have custodial staff clean and sanitize after every use. I don't know that that would 100% be possible, but if we have multiple bathrooms in any given building, it would give them a little bit more time to rotate through.
Steve, how long a ceremony are you talking about?
We're hoping to keep it to 1 hour.
So if it's 1 hour and you ask the students and the families to pee ahead of time, maybe it would become a moot point for the most part. You would hope it be moot.
I would agree. I would agree. But there's one in every crowd.
Yeah, I hear you, but I would emphasize that, and maybe it would become just the exception, not the rule at all here.
Yeah, because if you only had 10% of the people do it in an hour, you're only dealing with 20 people.
Yep.
So it sure seems like with some planning to say, we're going to all work together to make this happen.
Well, the other thing, and I'm not suggesting this, would be, not really, would be to tell everyone no bathrooms. So make sure you pee ahead of time. We're going to be done in an hour. Hold it. That's being facetious, everyone. It's okay. Okay.
But with that, if you think about it, that certainly it's a weak area, and with some cooperation, you actually can do not as hard as Herb is joking, but something that says, that's the spirit of this thing. Let's try to make this work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we're working on a document, and I'd be happy to share it with the board prior to us sending it, or including you when we send it, if you would prefer. But with some of the expectations about masks, we have a line in there about anyone who is feeling sick or exhibiting any of the following symptoms, those types of things, not to attend, talking about social distancing, I think, as much as I would like to be brief on something like that, keep it to 1 page, I anticipate it's going to be a 2 to 3 page document to make sure that we cover everything that we want.
And then the question that I have, and it's one that you'd have to work on, is when this is all done and everybody's sitting 6 feet apart and say, okay, guys, you're all done, you've graduated, what are you gonna do to be saying, we're gonna make this not like the beaches of New Jersey?
So we've talked about that a little bit already. Our plan, and this would go in that document I just referenced. Our expectation is that immediately following the ceremony, everybody leave. I think that's a matter of safety. We're going to have cars pulling out. We can't have families taking pictures. We can't have, people throwing up their caps and waiting and finding them. Basically, the plan would be immediately after the ceremony, students return to their cars. And the other thing I didn't mention, if it's a rainy day, we're planning rain or shine. So in the event that there is rain, students would remain in their cars for the entirety of the event, except when they're receiving their diplomas. But our plan is we need to empty that parking lot safely after the event. So we're going to have spots numbered, and spot 1, row 1. The expectation is as soon as I end the ceremony, I'm going to start directing car 1, row 1 out, car 2, row 1, and just move them right along. And I think that's where our messaging up front will be important. And, the Granby Police Department, I know, will be helping us with that as well. But I understand your question, and I think those are the things we're trying to be proactive about. And I think to your point, soon saying like this is in the spirit of being able to do something like this in these times. Let's not ruin future events because we need to hug each other, because we need to take this picture. If you want to come back, the event's at 10 a.m. If you want to come back at 1 o'clock in your cap and gown, take a picture in front of the school when you're alone, I don't have a problem with that. It just can't happen while we have the rest of the graduates present.
Lee, we haven't heard anything from you.
Well, I'm hearing everything. It sounds like it's been well thought out, and the police, I believe, are going to be on 202 to help people with the exit plan. The bathroom thing is, questionable, but Herb's idea is probably joking, but well thought that, this is the one time you can get away with it. I can't see what can go wrong here. As long as everybody behaves, stays in their cars, stays separate, and, it should be in the best interest of everybody.
Steve, just one clarification. If it did rain and the students are in the car, how do they get their diploma again?
So the diploma part would be the same. We have a couple extra pop-up tents that we would allow the students we would be able to spread them out. So at that point, we'd probably have 5 students out instead of 10 and spread them out under 3 pop-up tents.
Got it.
And then the parents on the other side.
Got it. Okay.
So that would be the only time they're outside of their car in the event that there is rain.
Right. And everything is taking place on asphalt. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So there's not going to be anybody, if it's raining cats and dogs, no one's going to get their car stuck or some stupid scenario.
No, the parking lot's really, it's brand new. And to be honest, that was one of the reasons that, one of a couple reasons that we decided not to pursue it at Dufresne. We were just worried if you get a couple of days of rain before rain the day of, it would be a swamp.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Keith, is there any snafu in this? Obvious?
I'm sorry, were you asking me, Dick?
Yes.
I'm sorry, yeah, Herb. I don't think so. I think that they've planned it out about as well as you possibly can, and I think their focus is not just on doing this for the students and their families. The focus has been on what the regulations are and the public health implications. And obviously they put a ton of timing into it, and they've tried to anticipate any questions or problems. From my perspective, I think they've done as well as they possibly could.
I agree. I think this ought to move forward.
I do too. Lee, it sounds like you do too.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Sure, a lot better than having a sign on your lawn.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have the signs up, but that's not all we can do. They won't let us
No.
get away with that.
Yeah. So, okay, have a good night.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, the items that we have left, and I see Andrew Parker has been patiently listening to all of our doings. We have three items, 4 items, but one of them is a chemical spray. Another one is the mosquito district. Another is camps and summer school. And I had a 4th one, but let's settle at these. My suggestion is let's do camps and summer school. Herb, that was your item. This one is not an agenda item. So it means that we can discuss this. We cannot make any decisions on this one. If we need to make a decision, then we can reschedule it, have Gene host the meeting. So Herb, you've got the floor. This was yours.
Well, Nancy Jenks and Cheryl want to have some guidance on what they should be thinking about for this summer. And we've had some issues with camps in the past, and I'd like to avoid that in the future. So we need to discuss how we want to approach camps and summer school. We don't have guidance yet from the governor.
No, and in fact, I just reviewed when Andrew was talking to me earlier today about it. It looks like even on phase 2 and 3, it sure seems like their guidance, which is limited, is talking about outside activity, nothing indoors.
Well, that might apply to one and not the other. So camps outside, summer school inside. Maybe we should take them one at a time and think about them.
One of the things I'd suggest, Herb, is what you just brought up is about our experience with the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts is to dig up our pre-camp program, that the inspection that we were gonna have, and I could dig that list back up again and take another cut at putting it out that at least deals with the generic outdoor camp, right? If that makes sense, it probably does, because we promised we would do that.
I think without some central guidance, I'm not sure we're not just whistling in the wind here, Dick. We really need a firm bit of guidance from Boston to know how to approach this.
I know that the governor has got a committee that's working on how you open up the activities with youths. That I don't know what the timing is, but I listened to what they were struggling with at the minimum, they were looking at what happens at classrooms. And then they were backing down from there. And obviously that the people at McDuffie are dealing with also with a residential school, which complicates it more. But that's at the end of the summer. But in terms of the guidance that we have right now, I don't feel that I know enough about what the safe protocol is to give any recommendations.
Well, I feel the same way, and that's why I'm hedging here.
What I suggested to Andrew today was that we try to look at what happens in the next 2 weeks. That we certainly can't give recommendations. We can't say, gee, at the end of June, you guys can be doing this with a school. We don't have that recommendation, and there will be some coming. But do we try to push? Does McDuffie try to push and say, let's get off of dead center here because this is coming?
If I may, from our point, what we're looking for right now is your best guess guidance as to whether we can run an activity at all, because we have an obligation to the parents who have signed up for this to let them know whether they should be seeking other options or whether we will not be able to run at all. And we also need to do some back of the envelope figuring to see that with whatever restrictions may be in place, whether we are going to be able to do this at least break even. It would not be practical for us to take a loss on this, the certainty of our other financial circumstances right now.
To help me, Andrew, what is the timing? If you were going to be saying this is the date that we need to be starting up with one of these programs, what would that date be?
Well, we're going to be starting our scheduled day camp the first week in July. All of our residential programs, all of our residential summer camp programs on this campus have already been canceled for the year.
I missed that. I couldn't hear what you said, Andrew. Could you repeat it, please?
I'm sorry. All of our residential programs have been canceled for the summer camp.
Okay.
So we're looking at starting day camps the first week of July, and we're looking at residential boarding programs to resume the school year as early as the third week in August. And possibly earlier than that, if your recommendation to us is that we bring our boarding students in early in order to have them quarantine prior to the beginning of school. We want to be as flexible, as reasonable, and as prudent as possible given these uncertain times.
My only thought is that the governor's office has got to be very cognizant of the timing. Summer is right around the corner. I don't know who or how to approach the office, but I guess we and other towns like us need to at least start the conversation because it's handicapping everybody. It's unfair to you guys running your operations as well as dozens of other schools and camps statewide.
Well, I think part of the issue is going to be what happens with reinfections as the country starts to open now. If we start to see a major bump in COVID infections, hospitalizations, and subsequent deaths, there's not going to be any summer camps. And so I think that's part of the equation and part of the uncertainty of all of this. What is going to happen as we slowly in Massachusetts and in a phased way open up? In other parts of the country, I would say to you, like Georgia, man, they're not running any summer camps. Not even a chance. Maybe we'll have a chance, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what's going to happen, whether we're going to see a recrudescence of these infections. If I were to bet, I would bet that the COVID infections are going to increase and hospitalizations will increase and deaths will increase. So it's going to make this more problematic, but that's only a guess. And that could be 100% wrong. So
Let's ask from a timing standpoint, Andrew. If you look at the 1st of July is when you would be liking to start. Now let's go forward or backwards towards here. When would you need to be telling those parents that you're going to be having a camp if you're starting on the 1st of July?
I think that it would be unreasonable and unfair to the parents to give them less than 4 weeks notice. And I understand that it's very unlikely that we are going to come out of this meeting with any guidance, since from the governor's office so far there is none.
So 4 weeks really says now. Within a week, you would have to commit to the way you're going to go.
Right. So what I'm thinking is, when is your next meeting?
2 weeks.
Do you have a good sense that there might be some further guidance from the governor's office by then?
Herb and Lee, I don't.
I don't. No.
Nothing.
I don't think so, Andrew. Remember, we're being cautious here in Massachusetts.
Yes, and I support that and I respect that. So I think the best case for us here at McDuffie might be to go ahead and at minimum cancel the first 2 weeks of planned summer camp activities until we have sufficient guidance upon which to build a program.
Well, that gives you a little more time, gives all of us a little more time. I don't know whether that's sufficient, but it doesn't press it quite as hard, because a week from now, I don't believe we're going to have an answer.
The only thing that there may be some hope is I'm hearing that they're talking about daycare opening up at the end of June. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but if it does, there have to be some guidelines for children being in close proximity to each other. In fact, Gene, didn't you put something out today saying that that one of the daycares was going to be opening on June 29th?
I don't have a confirmation of that. That is what I heard. I received a phone call from the Department of Labor Standards stating that they received notice that a daycare was opening, I guess, today. But, and he said that they cannot open until June 29th, I think it was.
That's what I thought.
The end of June. Yeah. But, that's if the governor allows it.
So I think I would support, Andrew, you're saying your first 2 don't go, But 2 weeks from now, I have to believe if 4 weeks from now that we're planning to open daycare, 2 weeks from now, we're gonna know what some rules are.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, please? Is there some type of a state oversight licensing board that lets you guys run summer camps? And
No,
my point is, if there is, then could they become the conduit to get the conversation going, barring the fact that there's no dramatic increases in any extra cases that Herb pointed out a few minutes ago? In other words, if all these different towns and schools, UMass, McDuffie, Smith, etc., are having these day camps, they're in the same bind you are, which is unfair. But I don't know who to approach to try to extract some guidance from.
our license to operate as a school comes from the Board of Education, and to operate as a summer camp comes from the Board of Health, from you.
Okay, nothing to do with the state.
The only thing even close to that is the annual corporate filing from the Attorney General's office, and our accreditation, which comes from a nonprofit agency that's not state affiliated.
I was kind of hoping there was some other agency, not to be overly governmental about this whole thing, but, you know, somebody else in the background who would be getting phone calls on a daily basis from these camps all across the state saying what we're saying here, that we need somebody to point us in the right direction.
With all due respect, it's you, and the state appears to have left both of us in the lurch.
Okay,
That's what
so
it
at this, to summarize, it looks like you're gonna cancel the first 2 weeks, and we're gonna shoot for having guidance 2 weeks from now.
I'm going to bring that as a recommendation back to our school and to our summer programs coordinator, and yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Our next one is the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District. Herb, you managed to get some information. I did not do very well on any of mine. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll have something. And were you able to find out the chemicals, Herb, that the district was going to be using?
The only chemical that was talked about is BPH, and that's a bacillus. It is an organic compound which is taken into the guts of mosquito larvae. This is infanticides, not adult pesticides or pesticides. It's a larvicide.
Yeah.
It is taken into the gut of the larvae and it blows up their guts. So when I spoke to people about it, it's very, very benign. Does that mean it doesn't have any side effects? I don't know the answer to that, other than if one got a lot of it on one's skin, would it tingle? Perhaps for some short period of time. The issue, however, that you ran into the other night with people saying, well, we lose control if we join the mosquito control district, is patently false. And I sent you and Lee and Jean information about that.
Yep.
This is totally an a la carte issue. You buy what you want. And as a matter of fact, the mosquito control district at this time is only, and I underline that, able to do surveillance. It does no distribution of chemicals of any kind, whether larvicides or adulticides. And it certainly isn't involved in any spraying. If it were involved in spraying, they would charge the town. The town would have to agree to have it done because the town has to pay for it.
Yeah.
Everything is a la carte. So joining the district, which is early on in its lifetime, is to get surveillance. To get surveillance. Now, that doesn't mean that if the governor and the Department of Public Health of the state of Massachusetts declared an emergency in the town of Granby and decided they were going to spray, that would have nothing to do with the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District. It would also have little to do with the town of Granby.
Right.
Since it would be a directive from the Department of Public Health and the governor in an emergency situation where we had presumably many cases of triple E. So whatever the select board was jawing about the other night, they are misguided and uninformed about this issue.
So we will just have to get this information, the one that you actually sent two things out. One was the summary, and then you sent out the actual hard copy from them.
Correct. I sent that to you, to Lee, and to Jean, and I would ask you to send that to the select board and to Chris Martin so that they understand reality and not just hallucinating about what they think might happen.
Well, I'll make
It's,
a call again tomorrow, Herb, that you've got this chemical. There's the other one, that the adulticide, that's the, I forget, Advil 10 plus 10 or something. And and then there's, I'm still trying to
which
get.
the Pioneer Valley doesn't use. It doesn't use any of these things now.
Right, because
Dick.
it's not doing it.
It's not doing it. And
Right.
it would only do it if the town contracted with the district to have it done.
Right.
No one is going to come in and spray your lawn or spray your well or spray Forge Pond or spray anything unless the governor and the Department of Public Health from the state declare an emergency here.
Right.
Just as a side note, I did speak to Mr. Joyce last week for about 5 minutes on this topic. And he was very open to, if we wanted to, contact the office and they'll tell us, me, whoever, what company they used last year for Charter Day. And therefore we can just make a quick determination what chemical that was used, because they were very happy with it. And I'm not sure that'll help anybody, but at least we'll be able to share some information.
I'm glad Mr. Joyce was forthcoming with you, because I will give Chris Martin a call. I asked this morning if he would get me the chemical that they use, but as long as, but again, I'm not exactly sure how Mr. Joyce determined whether he's happy or not.
Yeah, I totally get that.
So-
Dick, just for the record, it's my understanding that there was discussion of Agent Orange at the select board meeting. I would like to have in our record what that discussion was and why it took place.
We'll have to see what the Board of Selectmen's record captured, and it'd be interesting if when I talk to the man, the GCAM person, before this meeting started, he indicated that that was a taped meeting. So we ought to be able to get exactly that conversation. But yes, in fact, it was. In fact, he said that well, we should, instead of using my recollection, let's see what the tape shows.
I would very much want to have that in the record, since it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you're right, that because that was a question that came up, saying this stuff is just like, as I recall, was saying this stuff is just like Agent Orange, in that the government said it doesn't hurt you, and it could be terrible for you. But again, the record ought to speak for itself, and we should be able to get it and get it in our record.
Please do that.
Okay, let's see how we do that. And I will call Chris and ask what was the chemical, because you'll also see it during that meeting that we said, that was said that this chemical that they use for mosquito kills all the fishes and the birds and the bees.
And the bees, yeah.
Well, okay. And all the fairies in the trees.
Okay, I have one other item that Jean got a text, I guess, that came from, my light is dim here. Looks like Valerie Macy at South Street. And she was told that a company called well, she saw the truck apparently, Accurate Pest in Palmer. And she, according to her email, it says that she could smell it, that this company had workers with backpacks or such that sprays, and that she had to close her windows because the chemicals, she could smell it coming into her house. And her claim is that she was, that I don't know whether they told her, but she got the name of a chemical that is bifenthrin, that's used for mosquito control. I looked up bifenthrin, and it's not an adulticide. It's used primarily for insects that are in the ground, termites, and they said in the event that mosquitoes were just really stretching to find water in the ground to try to breed, it's not particularly effective on adult mosquitoes. The issue, though, is that it is a poison for cats. That it will kill the cat, and it is, at least according to their EPA sources, is that it also is moderately toxic to dogs. So it certainly seems to me that this woman has concerns about someone coming right next to her house and spraying and stuff going into her house when it's a chemical that shouldn't be used around dogs and cats. So do we do, and she's asking for our advice. And I'd recommend that we ask whoever the head of AccuPest in Palmer is to come in and talk to us. That doesn't seem like a safe thing to just walk in and start spraying this thing. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's totally irresponsible. I don't know who this company is, and I don't know this compound. I didn't read the severity of side effects that you did, Dick, but there are some side effects from it. And at a minimum, the company should have been talking to adjacent neighbors. So I think they have been very irresponsible, and we should ask them to come and talk to us. And if they don't want to do that, I would prevent them in the future from operating in this town.
What is your thought, Lee?
Usually, because I do hire an insect company, they have to provide, of course, an invoice for the property they were on, which lists the chemical and the quantity used with date and time. So it should be pretty easy for them to send us a duplicate invoice of whatever they were doing in town at that location. And it should list out the chemical. I think it's by law. So we can know what we're, for sure, what we're dealing with. But again,
Gene,
you guys are right. That's completely crazy for them to be using something which could be killing some of the neighbors' pets.
Gene, can you give them a call and ask them what they were, find out? In fact, maybe it's going to take 2 calls. Maybe you're going to have to talk to Valerie Macy and find out when, in fact, they were there and ask them what they applied. And if, in fact, this is what it is, for them to make an appointment for our next meeting to talk to us.
Okay.
But it definitely did say that when I read it, that it was toxic, the cats.
Well,
Okay.
yes, there's some toxicity, but I didn't read the lethality that you were referring to.
Yeah.
Toxicity, yes. Lethality, I didn't see.
Okay. So we will do that. Gene can do that. And what else? What else do we have?
Granby Park regulations.
Oh, yes. That's going to be easy because the select board was supposed to go to the playground commissioner, let them know what our proposed regulations were and get their comments. And the select board was supposed to get back to us by today. That didn't happen. So,
Okay.
and I'm guessing we're going to end up with some new guidance on parks anyways. Because they're going to start opening some stuff up according to I think part of phase 1 has some park openings. So.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I did receive, Lee, a well permit for 126 Maximilian Drive. Have you been out there?
No, that just happened about 2:30. I don't think I would stopped in.
Okay.
And I just went from, work straight here to.
Okay, no problem. Do you need me to send you a copy of the permit?
No, I can go there tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I believe it's staked. I think what happened on that property was that the septic system was installed on an empty lot some years ago. and they finally must have just sold it.
Hmm.
So now they want to put the well in.
Interesting.
Okay. So you'll call me and let me know if it's approved. Can I sign it, or should we wait till the next meeting?
I can call you tomorrow morning. I'm going to go out there probably about 8:30.
Okay.
Take a look at the site. And you know, I don't know if I'm going to have a reference point. That's my only confusion, because if the SAS is, of course, buried because they put it in the ground 3-4 years ago, I'm not going to have anything to reference it to.
Hmm.
Because it's all going to be growing over.
Okay.
So, maybe there'll be a manhole cover on the street or something I can measure off of. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll see what I'll go in the morning, see what it looks like, and then call you with any comments or concerns regarding the print. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Maybe the
Sounds good.
safe thing is, Lee, on this one.
Yes.
Is go to the lot owner and say, you know, you're asking me to stake out a well when we don't know where the septic system is. You guys need to go in, get your installer and have them stake out the SAS so you know what you're doing. Otherwise, someone's going to be, if you end up saying, oh, put the well here and it's too close to the leach field,
Right.
someone's
on
going
me.
to come back to us and say, hey, Board of Health, you said to put it here. I know the well guy
Yeah.
doesn't want to hear that.
No. Well, actually, the guy who stopped in was Alan Katarovitz himself. So, I think it's the last building lot on that street that he built.
And he's
Yeah, I do
probably
have
the
a-
one that put it in.
I have a plan for a lot 11, Maximilian. I don't know if that would be it.
This is at the very end of the street where the cul-de-sac is.
Yeah.
There's an empty lot on the right-hand side.
Okay. Because I can send you this if you think it'll help at all.
Yeah, why don't we do it? Let's. I'm not going to go out tomorrow. Now that we just had this
Okay.
thought process, let's get me a copy of it.
Okay.
And there's no rush on our part. The rush is on his part.
Okay.
But we need documentation.
All right.
Obviously.
I can fax you over what I have. It says lot 11. I'm not sure if that's the same. I can double check with the assessor in the morning and see if
That'd be
that's the
great.
same one. Okay. Sounds
In
good.
fact,
That'd be great.
if Alan is the installer, he really should have been giving us an as-built, and then you'd be able to see where everything is. But again,
Yeah, and I'm guessing, and I don't know, maybe just a tank is in the ground. I really don't know, because how can he put in a 3-bedroom design if the people who buy the lot want to put in a 5-bedroom house?
I
You know
have
what I mean?
no idea.
Well, that's,
But-
yeah.
But what happens is we're starting off with a lack of information, and that typically can only get us into trouble.
Right, it's just going to get worse. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are we done?
I hope so. I'm about done.
Okay. All right. Have a good
Yeah.
night.
All
Time
right.
for a
All right,
nap.
thanks, everybody.
Yep. Good night.
Good enough. Thank you.